You want to introduce yourself real fast, and then we'll get to Tommy's video?
Yeah, Truther. What do you want me to call you, Truther Cop? I'm sort of new to your channel. I had watched the Woo's News Act 2, right? And I seen that you did like a little review of it, and I was like, well, I'm going to subscribe to this guy and see what he's talking about, because it kind of piqued my interest, right? It don't necessarily agree with all of it, but anyway, my name is Eric Clark. I'm a pro se January 6th defendant. I was charged May 4th of 2021 with the 4 standard misdemeanors, 2 unlawful entry of the Capitol building, and 2 violent entry of a federal building. I was peaceful and prayerful my entire time in Washington, D.C. I didn't even witness any violence firsthand, but that's just me and a little bit of my experience in a nutshell. I'll land my plane there for a minute, drop it back to you, and go from here wherever you want me to go. I can give.
Oh no! Oh, you dropped off there.
Whatever you like.
You dropped for a moment. Yeah, I definitely want to get into your story for sure. I promise Tommy I play his video.
We can just roll with it since he's already talking. I gotta have some questions too.
Okay. Then do you want to just carry forth with your story? I mean, because that's really kind of what we're focused on. And the fact that you're saying you're pro se and you're not in jail, unlike a lot of these people, you know, kind of that's what a lot of people have been pushing for, is to get to know the courts, right? Get to know the law. And that point's being missed by these people at the Freedom Corner. They're just protesting, possibly for money is what it seems to be. But I'm definitely interested in your take on that as of someone who's representing himself.
So I can't go into D.C. to protest with them, right? I'm restricted from D.C. Nobody there is an actual January 6th defendant. Some of them, like there's one lady that goes to the corner. Her name's Helena Gibson. She does do a lot of outreach, right? Like if I'm experiencing a hard time, lost another job because an employer found out where I was on one day of the year, she's quick to throw me a few bucks. So I'm not going to disparage them. However, I do see exactly where you're coming from, right? There was. I'll just start with my account of January 6th. I think that'll clear up a lot of what I'm saying, right? So I went to our nation's capital. I got there on the 4th, on the night of the 4th. The 5th, we walked around, saw a lot of the monuments, went to some of the speeches thing. On the 6th, we got up early and went down to the Ellipse, got there about 6:30 in the morning. And there was a line from the Ellipse way back wrapping around the Washington Monument. The thing was so long that we decided just to park like right across the street from where the speech was, right in front of this big, huge television, you know, just off the road. We could see the thing really well. We could hear it really well. And there was just a massive amount of people there. So we wasn't going to fight that big line to get into the Ellipse. So we stood up by that Jumbotron. We watched the whole speech. When Trump says it's time to peacefully and patriotically march down to the Capitol, that's what we did. I didn't necessarily show up there on January 6th because of some belief that our election was stolen. I've known that for a long time, right? This isn't the first election that's been rigged. That's what they do. It's how the uniparty stays in power and how they have been in power for so long. So I knew that. God sort of put it on my heart to be there. And when we left the speech, God had once again put it on my heart to just stay at the front, right? Not to cause any violence, but just to stay at the front. Like I said, I didn't even see any violence. So I did that. I marched fast. The guys with me, mind you, I met them through Facebook, right? I didn't know these guys. I carpooled down with them. They're a little heavy set, so
your connection dropped out again.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. They park right there at the corner of that reflecting pool. They sat down at the reflecting pool. I'm like, well, I've got to get all the way up to the very front. You know, God had put that in my heart just to be up at the front. Right. So I did. I went all the way up to the front of the crowd. Even as I'm coming up through it, I'm suspicious of what's going on. Right. Because we had just left the speech. I'm all the way up at the front of the crowd marching down to the Capitol. And when I arrive at the Capitol, right, there's none of, like in hindsight, there's none of that fencing that you see in some of the earlier footage, right? That stuff's already all gone. There's people all the way already up to the very top of the Capitol steps, people climbing that press tower, people up on it. So things already struck me as odd, but God said get to the front, so I went to the front. I let out a big loud hoorah, and a tall gentleman in all brown with a MAGA hat comes over to me and he bends down and he says, Semper Fidelis, devil dog. We got to hold the crowd back a little bit longer, or they're going to fuck up the plan. So all that rung with me out of that, right in that moment, was back the blue, right? Back the blue. Yeah, I can chant that. I can chant back the blue. Now, I didn't see anybody assaulting the police or anything. I didn't really get where he was coming from. But from my vantage point, right there at the bottom right corner of that press tower, all the way up at the very front, me, then this gentleman, then the Capitol Police, right? Back the blue, back the blue. That's what I was chanting. And this gentleman marches off down to the left, and he's sort of going back and forth with sort of an obvious sense of control over both those protesters that are all the way up there in the front and the Capitol Police. Well, a year later, I see this guy in a social media post. When Ray Epps. So right.
Was this Ray Epps?
This was Ray Epps. It was Ray Epps, man. No, it was Ray Epps. So after he says that to me and he marches back and forth, about 45 minutes pass and he's continuing his march back and forth. After about 40 or so minutes, I see he pulls this, because I'm standing right next to him when he does this, like directly beside him. He pulls. It's a hard hat, but if you know anything about it's like a hard hat specific to like iron workers.
Might be my
so he's one.
I don't know.
He bends down.
Sometimes
I keep cutting out.
Yeah, I don't know if it's mine or yours. It could be mine. I don't have an issue.
Go as close to your router as you can and just chill there.
Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm in here by my router.
It might be because you're walking.
I'll set my butt down until I listen.
Thank you.
So anyway, he comes up to me. He says, "Semper Fidelis, devil dog. We gotta hold the crowd back a little bit longer, or they're going to fuck up the plan." He starts his march back and forth. About 45 minutes in, he pulls another gentleman up out of the crowd. That gentleman's wearing like an ironworkers type hard hat, and he says something to him I didn't hear. But that guy that he's talking to has two other people he brought up there to the very front with him. Right after they get done talking, the Capitol Police all sort of just pull back. They're on the left-hand side, all the way past that press tower. They just sort of pull back and let everybody through. Ray Epps leaves, right? He goes down the steps and leaves, and the gentleman he was just talking to, along with two other guys, they make a beeline directly forward, straight ahead and to the left, right? At the base of that staircase that everybody started walking up. And there was a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot, maybe a little taller, maybe 4 foot square concrete block structure protruding from the ground. It had a green copper tarnished lid on it. And these guys, they took that lid right off. Inside that was like a grated system, where you could lock it like a grate door. And they opened that right up. It was unlocked. And they pulled out a big old 12-foot long 2x4, a big old piece of tubing like that you would roll up vinyl linoleum or carpet in. Big long piece, like 12-foot long piece of cardboard tubing. About a 3 foot a 3 foot tall ladder. So I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And I look down in this thing they're pulling it all out of, and it's like a little tunnel. It's got electrical lines and plumbing. What it is if you've ever worked construction, it's wet wall access to the building, right? And it most likely comes to a boiler room or utility room somewhere in the building. Yeah. So outside egress to the interior of the Capitol was left completely unlocked with their siege. I'll call them props. CNN calls them siege weapons. I'll call them siege props that they started pulling out of this thing. And I'm like, this isn't where I want to be. So I follow around to the left and up that staircase everybody's going up. I get all the way up to the very top of the Capitol complex right there at the westernmost part, the Senate wing. And this girl latches onto me, talking about she's covered in pepper spray. Her face is all red, and she wants out of there. So I kind of scoop her up. I carry her back down to the bottom where my friends are at, and I go back up to the top. Now, for about 2 years, I thought that I just ran into some random girl who maybe got some pepper spray on her and was looking for some help, and I helped this girl. But about 6 months ago, I found a piece of footage, because the past 2.5 years, I've been nonstop grabbing any piece of public footage I can get, because I can't get access to that discovery database. For one, I'm pro se, and that protective order requires any defendants to go through counsel to access it. So they give me this standby counsel that won't even look at it, and they won't give me access at all because I refuse to sign that protective order. I'm not signing it. It waives my rights to discovery. They can They can
Oh,
take it thing and stick it somewhere.
is it this? I covered a protective order. Did you see that stream by chance? They want Taylor Toronto to sign it. Is it the same one?
It's the same one. And let me tell you something about that protective order. A judge by the name of Michael Harvey wrote it. Okay. This was my original magistrate, right? That over on my status hearings I was going through. You're first in a magistrate district, and then you go into like arraignment. So the last magistrate hearing I had was before Judge Michael Harvey, who wrote the protective order. And the hearing was regarding my motion to have that protective order amended, right? So that they take out the through counsel provision. Because the through counsel provision in that protective order, once you sign it, it doesn't give you access to discovery. It gives your attorney, or if you're pro se, your standby counsel access to discovery, not you personally. So I wanted it at the very least. I want to not sign it at all, right? But at the very least, I wanted it amended to where it took out the through counsel provision. And Judge Michael Harvey, he agreed 100%. And this is the judge that wrote the protective order. He agreed 100%. Told prosecution that they needed to set a day right before the next hearing to meet with me, my standby counsel, and the lead investigating officer with the FBI. We all needed to sit down and work out an amended version of this protective order that excluded the through counsel provision. 2 days before we're set to meet to make these amendments, he cancels, says the FBI agent can't make it, and ignores all my attempts to schedule another one. My next status hearing rolls around, and they have pulled me. I'm sorry, I'm going to sit back down. I'm sorry. So when my next status hearing did roll back around, they moved me from the magistrate district to the arrangement district, changed the judge from Harvey to Maida.
Oh, yes.
Now we're losing you further a little bit.
Yeah, I know, man. All right, so you're there. Bad all day.
It's because I'm in here, man. I'm telling you, I'm heavily monitored. I'm on all them lists. It's because I came up in your chat.
Right. Well, you're new to TC. All he does is cover truckers and the January 6th stuff. So you guys are doubling up on it.
Yeah, we're getting double hit.
And ever since the night I was streaming the police standoff on his channel from my place, these streets say that I'm an agent or I'm a cop. So the chick that came up to you and said she was pepper sprayed, if she was indeed and hadn't been cleaned off or anything, you very much would have known because it would have been like affecting you. Did you get that effect?
I didn't get any effects from it, but you have to remember there's thousands upon thousands of people here. It's a huge crowd. I'm having to yell the whole time I'm making my way down, like make a hole, real loud. My concern was getting her down to the bottom. I didn't feel the effects of any residual pepper spray. And about 6 months ago, I found a piece of footage titled Elizabeth of Knoxville, and it's the girl that I carried down, and she's interviewing, I guess after I carried her down, with the guy named Hunter Walker, who is the Yahoo News White House correspondent. And she's talking, and he asked, like, what were y'all doing? And she's like, we're storming the Capitol, it's a revolution. And the whole time she's got this rag in her hand, she keeps moving up to her face, and it's got an onion cut in half in it.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, man, there's only one time in my life I owned pepper spray, and I sprayed just one quick zit in the shower of the bathroom, and you had to leave that bathroom. It was like you started coughing and getting all CS gassy feeling.
And I was exposed to CS gas in the Marine Corps in my youth, right? I'd gone in the Marine Corps when I was 18. I was kicked out for substance abuse when I was in my almost 20. You know, I had some issues there that I still had to work on, but nonetheless, I'd experienced CS gas before. And what they were using on January 6th was fire extinguishers and smoke grenades. There was no gas.
Okay.
I'm saying that firsthand from somebody that was all the way at the very front, like Meade and the police. I'm looking right at them, right? Didn't attack them. They didn't attack me. I didn't see any violence. And all that was being deployed was smoke and people spraying fire extinguishers to make it appear as though it was gas.
And so, you know, if you use CS gas in the daytime, it's going to look like there's fairy sparkles in the air, and it's very much going to clear that crowd as well.
Yes. And like the what is it, the burn version of CS gas, right? You would launch out of them guns, is got like an ugly yellow, like almost a sulfurous color.
Yeah.
Right. And it brings out them sparkles when it burns. What they were using was a solid white. I even seen one of them balls laying on the ground smoldering up the smoke. And I'm like standing right above it and feeling no effects of it. And I sort of kick it. And at that moment, I'm like, yeah, I'm standing on a movie set. This is all fake.
Yeah. And so how would you gauge like your misdemeanor entry versus like them opening the doors for you guys?
Man, I went through open doors. I was like the 17th, 20th person in the building. Okay, so back to that girl Elizabeth of Knoxville. If I had not grabbed her and carried her all the way back down the reflecting pool, then I would have been right there with Ashley Babbitt, Jake Chansley, Taylor Hanson, Jaden X, Jade Sacker. The list goes on and on and on, right? Of all the people that have become the prominent faces and names for this whole thing, I would have been right there in that crowd had this person not, I say, intentionally separated me from that crowd, because I wasn't part of their pre-planned political theater, and they didn't want people that weren't part of their plan getting in the way. So they found constructive means like this to separate us from that crowd. That's That's my assessment of it.
And I think you had cut out during these parts, but what were you saying about how, like, because this is what I was interested in. There was that portion of the footage they got where they're like wrestling the barricade back and forth between the guards and the protesters and the climbing and all that. And then there's the time that everyone's cordially invited in and it's just like a sightseeing tour. Like, how was that, like, were you with the march from the Trump thing where they talked at his speech and then they went down?
Yes. Yes, I was at the very front of that march, though.
Okay, so when you marched down from the Trump thing, there was already the climbing and
yes,
stuff going on?
Yes, all that stuff took place prior to Trump's speech even ending, and in the time frame that most people, it took about 40 minutes to walk. It was a nice little walk from the Ellipse to the Capitol. I got there in about 20, 25 minutes because I attribute it to, like, when I was a kid, everybody called me Forrest Gump because I ran everywhere I went. I was in the Marine Corps for a time. I'm a small, thin guy, you know, so I'm fairly quick when I walk. Mm-hmm. And it was in my heart already placed there by God to be at the front. So if God wanted me at the front of that march, he was going to put me at the front of that march. You understand where I'm coming from?
I understand exactly where you're coming from.
So I was all the way up at the front of that march. Is the only reason I was there so quickly. I watched all of Trump's speech. And a lot of what you see, the wrestling with the sign, the wrestling with the barricades, the climbing and acting crazy, that took place. And from my point of view, it was all just a show for the cameras while we were all at the speech. Now, I can't say that with any, like I was there, saw the crisis acting in that instance, like where they're arguing with that barricade, because I was walking down from the speech. But I have reviewed personally more than 200 hours of footage, anything I can find, because this personally affects me. I'm on trial for this. My trial date is January 8th of 2024. Figure at 3 years after the fact. It's due process, right? That speedy trial if I ever fucking seen it. Pardon my language, sorry.
Did you say 2024?
Yeah, my trial is January 8th of 2024.
Wow.
You know, I was first arrested May 4th of 2021. Now I will say I'm not unfortunate like some of the ones that are maybe in the jails or whatever. I spent 4 hours in a rural jail here in Kentucky where corrections treated me super kind. They came and gave me a phone call to find a ride home. And they weren't going to let me walk from Oldham County back to Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County, where I live. All right.
So that's good. The police in your area were friendly with you.
Yeah, and even my probation officer was like super friendly, right? I got to a point in this where I was so depressed, I felt like I'm just going to let them lock me up, and I'm going to go sit in the solitary confinement until my hearing, because I'm just getting screwed over anyway. They're not giving me any access to discovery. They're not hearing any of the motions that I file, right? I'm getting steamrolled, and I gave up there for a short period. I let myself get into a position where I was evicted from my apartment. I call my probation officer and I tell him, look, my address is now city at large. You have no way to keep track of me. You have to come arrest me. And he said, no, I don't. He said, I'm not arresting you unless the judge puts out a specific order for me to arrest you. I don't like being put in the middle of all this. I don't agree with any of it. Please, Mr. Clark, you just keep your phone turned on, and as long as I can call you, I don't care where you're at.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a totally
And the
different
thing
experience than a
about
lot of people.
The thing about DC that does add to like the questionability of the whole situation is anytime someone asks me if I've ever left the country or been outside the United States, I say yes. In the third grade, we took a trip to DC, because a lot of people
Amen.
don't know Washington, DC is not technically America.
And I'm discovering that, right? I've been looking into a lot of this, these theories that the courts are a corporation, that America is a corporation, and I've sort of been taking it with a grain of salt, right? Well, a lot of people don't. No, there's a defendant.
No, there is a corporation style that
motions.
is America, the corporation. The 50 United States are what you're living in that you want to be part of. The America of a corporation is that entity that's conning.
And that's the approach one J6 defendant by the name of James Beek took. He took to filing affidavits instead of motions that made statements like the law is supposed to be in concordance with Scripture. And he would quote Scripture, right, like a verse in Matthew. And then he would quote like a piece from the Declaration of Independence. And then he would quote like a piece from the Constitution. And then he would say how he's not within their jurisdiction. They have to drop all charges. Well, lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, after 2 years of Mr. Beeks doing this, right, taking this approach, they had to acquit him. There is one J6 defendant 2 weeks ago who was acquitted of all charges using the defense that the government is a corporation and I do not fall under their jurisdiction as a defense. I was shocked by this. His name was James Beeks.
B-E-E?
Yep, B-E-E-K-S.
Yeah, the founding fathers were familiar with like sovereign freedom and natural law, and the Constitution was their attempt to legally spell it out as best they could. And we don't need a lot of these amendments, aka infringements, that are added and toyed with.
Right. Now, when you look up James Beeks' case, you're going to see it sealed, that you can't access his motions and affidavits he's filed. But I've got his phone number, and I have a couple of those. If you want to throw me an email address or something, I can email you the actual affidavits that he used and filed in court that, at the end of the day, resulted in his acquittal. The courts have sealed his case, right? Like you can pull up that there was a case and that he was acquitted, but you can't see like the affidavits that he filed that I'm talking about.
Could you email those to me?
Yeah, happily. Shoot me your email address.
How do you want? I can give it to you now.
Go ahead.
Contact@healinglaw.com.
Contact@healinglaw.com.
Yep.
All right, I got the site.
But I think this is the thing we have to be wary of moving forward in the future, because I support freedom. I support the right to protest. But we can obviously see on both sides that they're going to mob mentality psyop this. Because if Antifa shows up, there's magically a bunch of pallets of bricks there to throw. And when you guys show up, there's castle climbing equipment and such things. Back whenever this country started, whether you were a blacksmith, a farmer, or whatever, you just knew the rights and freedoms. You knew why you came to this country to do this. And you didn't have to congregate until like Civil War, French-American War, stuff like that. But like everyone was just living right compared to, our TikTok generation of today.
And I would even go so far as to argue that the majority of Antifa persons, now you've got like your teachers and politicians and higher ups that are involved as well, but the majority of those people are people like this guy, Bill Keene, who I'll tell you about here in a little bit if you'd like. But what they are people with past charges, drug addiction issues, that have run-ins with the law, right? And they get made an offer, right? These charges go away, or you get leniency in them if you participate in these upcoming events we want you to participate in. If you do these things, right? That's what a confidential human source is. It isn't necessarily like it is sometimes what Kash Patel proclaims it to be, right? Like a special forces operator hired by the FBI to go in and perform these sting operations. It is sometimes that, but 90% of the time, a confidential human source is someone with prior charges just looking for leniency, cooperating with the corrupt government for leniency and whatever crimes they've committed. So I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and when all those 2020 Summer of Love broke out, right, we had about 2 days of the same violence most major cities experienced. And then those...
Yeah, we did here in Denver as well. We had a couple of days of I didn't even realize it was going on till after the fact. I saw on the news on YouTube. I was like, I went downtown and checked that out. But yeah,
let me tell you what ended it here in Louisville. What ended it here in Louisville was those people that were protesting or not is irrelevant, right? But those people that were on the ground recognized that these busloads of people coming in from out of town
I think mine is so bad.
were filled with federal instigators, that they were causing issues in our city, that they were the root of the problems with the rioting. So the protesters on the ground approached these buses when they arrived, told them to turn around and leave, and lo and behold, the protesting didn't stop, but the rioting did.
Yeah, and even in Seattle or wherever the Summer of Love was that made all the news, I forget what channel it was, but they eventually found the highway overpass that had the encampment that all those characters were staying at, all those, whether they were homeless, mentally ill, whatever. You could recognize some of the key players by their tattoos and their styles, and somebody had busted here's the camp they're staying at. This is where all the paid ops are.
I'm glad I called Indy. I'm glad I caught your
Yeah, man. I'm glad you're here too. I'm sorry I keep cutting out
as well.
No, you're having great information. I keep trying to pull up the James Beach guy. I keep trying to pull it up for us.
Beeks, Beeks.
I found him. Yeah, but it says former Broadway actor James Beeks acquitted.
That struck me too. That got me as well. I'm not going to lie to you. That was the first thing I saw, and I was like, wait a minute. But I don't think that discredits. I don't think that discredits the courts are a corporation. I think that's pretty obvious now.
And I don't think Rittenhouse is forced to do anything. He had those interviews. He got paid on those. He got that court decision payment. All those news stations that slandered him have to pay. He's not forced to do anything.
And dude, I could go on about his lawyer as well. His lawyer is originally
put down enough pedos that he can sit around and get fat if he wants.
Heck yeah. You remember his original lawyer, the John Pierce Law Group, that was with Linwood, that Kyle came out and accused of trying to keep him in jail just so that they could make more money off of him?
Yeah.
Well, I had already gone pro se. I was determined I'm going to take my case pro se. I don't trust lawyers. I think they're part of the corrupt system. They're just agents of the court, even defense attorneys. Well, this lawyer, not him personally, but a lawyer that works for him and a paralegal that works for him, I get a phone call from them just randomly, right? I didn't reach out to them. I get a phone call from them, and they're wanting me to go over a lot of what I just went over with you guys, what I experienced on January 6th. And then they start telling me how my case is groundbreaking, and they can use it to subpoena Epps and actually get him on stand. And they really go out of their way to hype up what they can do for me. And then they tell me how it's going to all be free. And I'm like, dude, I can't afford no attorney, right? I'm unemployed right now. I can't pay your $50,000 retainer. Why are you calling me? And they say, well, that's why we're calling you, Mr. Clark, because we want to do this for you free of charge. Free of charge, it ain't going to cost you a dime. So, they got me hyped up and expecting some good legal defense, one of the top lawyers in the nation. The next day, they send me a 20-page legal agreement, and I start reading into it. And on about page 12, I find the financial agreements, and it puts me 100% financially responsible for $500 to $600 per hour right? Just after the fact, I would be building debt rather than owing them now. It wasn't in any way free to me, right? They were trying to hook me in so that they could then do the same thing they've done to other January 6 cases, where, for example, they made a big deal out of this one confidential human source in a Proud Boys case that wasn't a confidential human source at all. It was just a patriot who had reached out to the Department of Homeland Security in her city when Antifa was doing damage, right? She knew some of the people, so she called DHS and told them who they were, right? That's how these lawyers tried to say that she was also CHS on J6. And it all fell through because it was a lie. The whole point of that, though, was to discredit the confidential human source narrative on January 6th. You see what I'm saying? They named someone who was a confidential human source, but for the DHS in 2020, try to blame her for being a confidential human source for January 6th, and they couldn't prove it because it just wasn't true. It completely fell through, and this is John Pierce law. They don't subpoena any of the other people that are suspected confidential human sources, right? That's the end of it. It's debunked. This one person we accused wasn't. We all look like idiots now for saying there was confidential human sources. End of story. This is how these corrupt attorneys operate.
Yep, they manipulate the media and the story.
Yes.
They spin out the story.
Well, the media is owned by the overseers. It's Operation either Mockingbird or Paperclip. I get them mixed up. But,
that was all, and that was all the same lawyer. That was all the same John Pierce legal team on a Proud Boys case, right? Which I have some questions myself about. I don't think all of them were part of something, but I do have some questions like, why did they all travel all the way to Washington, D.C. on what they call an unofficial event? It's why they weren't in their gear, right? Why do they all travel to Washington, D.C. from their home states? If it's an unofficial event, well, they all gather together. Well, that's fine. I can understand that. You're in a brotherhood. You're going to gather together. But they don't even stay for the speech. They leave the ellipse before Trump even starts speaking and head on down to the Capitol and are a part of all this, what becomes the narrative for January 6th. But it all took place while the real Trump supporters were a 40-minute walk away at the ellipse. So, and even after the fact, when we're leaving Washington, D.C. the next day on the 7th in the morning, right, we're getting on the Donald.win, and we're seeing a lot of these guys who we had put our support towards the past 2 years start saying, oh, Donald Trump's just an big orange pedophile, because they were pissed that Donald Trump asked everybody to leave instead of asking militias to come forth, because their plan didn't unfold the way they wanted it to, when that wasn't at all what the American people were expecting. It wasn't what Donald Trump had planned. The original permits for January 6th, and a lot of people don't know this, include groups of, I think it was 130 some odd people taking a tour of the Capitol building between the two sessions, right? Between the certification that Joe Pence did and between each state individually being certified, there were supposed to be groups of 150 people that were there to protest at a time being led through the Senate wing and shaking the hands of their senators and congressmen and what have you, and headed back outside to watch more speeches.
Yeah, and that was my thing. And I mean, this is all just me looking through media information. But my thing with the alleged officers that deleted in ways in the days following that, I feel like that day didn't go down as bad as they needed it to or wanted it to in the grand scheme, if you will.
I would agree with that as well. I think that's where Wu's actors were a part of a sting operation, right? Were a part of a sting operation that quelled the violence that was meant to take place and maybe took some laptops in the process and is maybe using all this collateral damage in these J6 cases to expose a corrupt Department of Justice. Now, that's neither here nor there, right? Because that type of operation, the people involved with it would have to come forward and say this is what was going on, and it would have to be completed before they could do that, if that makes any sense.
It does, but like even in
it's just a theory, though. I don't know.
No, you're not crazy. Is what I'm saying is I'm so wrapped up in some research, and I've rotated communities like this so long. I can even see levels of chess where it's like we think we're doing the right thing that is playing into the plan. Like, this isn't my belief, but have you ever
I get
heard
it.
the theory?
It's not my belief either, but I 100% know where you're coming from.
Right, like, have you ever heard the theory that the Bible was written or modified long ago to get you to just allow the tyranny of revelations to go through?
So that's what I believed when I was a young man in the Marine Corps. I mentioned I got in trouble for substance abuse. I got put in a brig for 100 days. During that time, I spent 30 days in solitary confinement for getting into a fight with an officer and a guard, like a verbal fight, not a physical one. So they put me in the hole for 30 days with nothing but me and the Bible. And my intent was to read this thing to prove that it was written just to control us. And something completely different happened, right? I became convinced that it was real. Just at that point in my life, I didn't understand what it meant. Right. And I continued in my life of drug addiction and criminality for the next 20 some odd years till I truly found God. And not long after I got sober, January of 2018, about 6 months later, I found myself in a church, truly studying scripture, truly studying the archaeology behind it. Right. A lot of people don't know this, but the archaeology behind the Bible says that it's irrefutably true. Right. Irrefutably. If the Bible says it's there and you look where the Bible actually tells you to go, lo and behold, start digging and it's there.
Hey, guy.
Recently, I think it was in the
Hey, Fox. Can I ask you really quick? You gave me your name earlier. Am I able to just? I pulled up your case.
I have him back chatted if he's going to give you his name.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. This is why I don't mind speaking out about January 6th, right? I know I'm telling the truth. I know I was peaceful and prayerful the entire time I was there. I know I didn't even witness any violence. So I know I can't be caught up by somebody that's trying to weasel like incriminating information out of me. They're not going to get anything incriminating because there's nothing to get.
So I have to ask you, shaved? You've shaven?
I have. I've shaven recently. Yeah, I was trying to get another job in a kitchen, and the beard didn't exactly go over very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got no problem being Sky Daddy simps there, chat, because like we'll gladly simp to Sky Daddy. It's all there is for us. It's why most people are trying to fight for this last free continent. You godless heathens. But yeah, recently, I think it was in the Mesopotamia area. They found a brick that is engraved with the Pontius Pilate stuff. It's the more and more you find. Like, there's some things I don't even buy into. There's reasons I don't believe that the world was ever completely submerged in water for as long as they say. But I believe the things still happened that people would have believed that the entire world might have been covered.
No, I get where you're coming from, and I've actually been watching a lot more informational videos and other people's beliefs on this, and I see a lot where people are coming from.
Yeah, that's my personal.
I'm not saying it's changed my mind. I'm just saying that those of us who believe the Bible is perfect and complete shouldn't be at ends with those of us who question some of its integrity, right? We should be more coming together because at least we have some common ground, right? A place to start.
And I don't deny Jesus in any way. I just have room to speculate, if anything, on the grounds that it's a KJV, and then there's various V's out there besides the KJV. But the KJV is the last version left that hasn't removed the passage about how to remove demons through fasting and prayer. And the fact that so many versions are leaving that out, it just seems like set up for future demon possession, if you will.
No, I get it. And of all like these lost books people claim, right? I've been able to research most of them and debunk them by finding their origin dates, right? When they actually came 100 years after the Bible, right? So they were people after the fact expressing their own opinions who either had the same names of some people from the Gospels or lied, right? But one that can't be, one that I've been incapable of debunking is the Book of Enoch, and parts of it were even found in Cave 1 with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, so Enoch is referenced Enoch is referenced in the Bible. Like,
yes, in the book of Jude.
Yeah.
It's referenced in the book of Jude.
Yeah.
And the
Mm-mm.
part of the scraps that they found in Cave 1 of the Qumran Caves. And I say Cave 1 because after Cave 1, Bedouins started planting stuff in other caves because they realized, this old document may be worth a few $100, but if I put it in a clay jar and put it in this cave over up the way, now it's worth a few $100,000.
Possibly, yeah. But
hold on, I want to get back to the evidence here.
Right.
Were you ever able to get your hand? I didn't hear the end of the process here. Did you ever sign that motion, or that's what you're in the process of right now?
So I've continued to refuse signing the protective order. My last hearing, and this is if you're pro se and you're a J6 defendant out there, I recommend you go pro se. This is the best I've been able to get so far, and I think it's going to be helpful. Right, so my last hearing, I was able to force the courts, because I'm indigent and I qualify for a public defender, to pay for a paralegal team with CJA funds. So I was just able to hire a paralegal that lives here in Louisville, Kentucky, that is local to me. She did sign the protective orders. She had to go to a class down in Texas, right, like the DOJ paid for, before she could access the database, but she now has that access. And I can go starting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, will be the first day I'm able to. I'll be able to go sit in her office with her and her assistant and go through that database with them to sort of help them find the things that I think they need to be looking for to build my case. That said, I'm not allowed to take a cell phone in with me or leave with any data. I can discuss what I see all I want, right? Because I've not signed any protective orders. However, I cannot bring with me any evidence of what I might be discussing, because if I violate the protective order while I'm under their supervision, it falls back on them. And they you gave this information to Mr. Clark knowing he was going to release it. It cost these good people that are helping me their career. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And also, stay clear on what you can discuss and keep in touch with Truther Cop. And as you're leading up to your trial, come keep us up to date. And then if you happen to not come home from that trial, we can at least get your final messages out, or what happened to you can be known.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Makes sense. I'll do that. I got his email. I'll definitely stay in contact with you. I'm in contact with Woos. I try to keep myself in contact more seriously with people that really are hunting down the truth, not just looking for a narrative, right? Because these lawyers of other defendants and other defendants, they have their own worries, their own concerns, their own agenda for proving their innocence, right? And I have mine. I'm more prepared to talk to people in the community that at least notice from some level that this was infiltrated, that this was not what we're seeing. And because I feel like it keeps me in a better place, and it quite honestly probably is going to help my defense more in the long run.
And you can tell just from the media, you constantly hear insurrection, and not yet one insurrection charge, but they'll keep saying that word.
They say it in every one of our trials, even if we're not charged with it, the word comes out.
Man, just for my troubleshooting research, what internet service do you use?
Okay, this is going to freak you out, right? Because this freaks me out. Okay, so when I got home from January 6th, I had lost my employment. I was working as a CNC machine operator, and they let me go over it. So I couldn't really afford to pay all my bills, and internet was the first to go. So I quit paying my internet bill 2.5 years ago. I have my internet through Spectrum, which is the major cable company in Louisville, Kentucky, right? It's the major cable outlet. Mm-hmm. And for the past 2.5 years, I've not paid an internet bill yet. My internet is still on and going. I say it's because it's the Fed's way of monitoring me.
Yeah,
right.
Might as well get free internet if they're going to let you.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. When I noticed they weren't cutting it off, I'm like, well, I'm just going to not pay the bill and see how long it stays on. And it's been on for 2 years now without a bill being paid.
They need the Wi-Fi for all the bugs and cameras they planted in your house.
Must be a lot of them. Oh my gosh.
It's crazy though, right? Who doesn't pay their cable bill for 2 years and gets to keep cable? Nobody.
Not me, man. Once I'm behind a month, they start emailing me out to ask. Crazy.
Yeah. Why do you think that you're not in jail and so many people are? Like how?
I'd say the misdemeanors.
I'd say a combination of that. It's misdemeanors, and maybe it's because of the state I live in. Maybe it's because a lot of these people that are being arrested were their hired crisis actors, and it's part of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a very real possibility.
In Ray Epps until everyone was making a stink about it. They were just gonna let Ray Epps slide. That's why when you were describing, you cut out whenever you had said Ray Epps. That's why when you popped back in, I was like, is this guy you're talking about? Is this Ray Epps? Because you were describing what I've seen Ray Epps do at T.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And it makes sense that they would leave Ray Epps out as the cover and him the big conspiracy behind all of it.
Nope, there he goes. You can't
other
say
people that have been arrested and other people that you might be sending your money to.
Yep.
I think your internet drops out when you use keywords, man. It's that censored. I don't know what mine's doing.
I get the same deal on Spaces. I'll say that name on Spaces, and the whole space will end suddenly, and we'll have to reboot the space. And and I know that's sort of conspiratorial, but it happens too often for it to be coincidence.
Yeah. No, that's crazy, man. Have you seen this Taylor Toronto case at all that I've been talking about? That guy? You heard about him?
I haven't, but I'm definitely going to look into it.
Yeah, he's like tied in. Because have you heard anything about him?
No, I haven't. But there are more than 1,200 January 6th defendants. So,
alleged.
Well, we're celebrating
January 6th defendants, right?
Do you have anything?
First thing I spotted. Whenever, do you remember the U-Haul full of retail dressed feds with the transparent shields?
Yeah.
I remember I was on I can't remember if it was Facebook or Snapchat, where I was. Maybe it was YouTube when that was unfolding. And I'm sitting there in real time on the channel I'm on going, listen, guys, there's nothing illegal about a bunch of guys riding around with no weapons in a U-Haul. So why are they submitting? They had no plan. They weren't up to anything. They weren't caught in the act of anything. They were just conveniently pulled over as a truck full of guys all in uniforms with transparent shields in a state that is not known for Rainbow Coalition parades and shit, even though they said they were going to go infiltrate a rainbow event. I'm like, guys, I don't see a crime here, as they're all at gunpoint getting arrested. Everything started screaming at me since then, pretty much.
It's optics. Optics used to discourage you from speaking your own voice, from protesting and asking for a redress of grievances from a corrupt government. Of course, they want to discourage you from doing that.
And another channel I want to link you up with if you've never heard of them.
Hold on, I want to ask him about this because it is the one today. We got to keep things on topic. It is the 1 year anniversary of Freedom Corner, and these people have been fighting for the J6 people who are still in prison for a year now. Okay. Yeah. Would you like to thank them?
I would. I do want to thank them because regardless of whether they're grifting or not, right? I don't know every one of them as an individual. I know a couple of the individuals that go to this, and those individuals, when I've called them and said, man, my electric's going to get shut off, they immediately had $200 for me on Cashapp. When I called them and said my phone's getting cut off, that they had my phone bill paid. So it's not easy I don't want to disparage people that you can't call somebody grifting when they put up the money they say they're raising for J6ers and they hand it to a J6er when they ask for it. Right. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good going on there. I think there might be some crisis acting as well. I know what the people on the other side are doing just shows their true colors. It's kind of despicable the way that they act. Right on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the street.
Well, but
constant yelling and whistling.
Yeah, I know it's very annoying, but they're all annoying to me at this point. They all get on my nerves, but so does everyone on the internet. So.
Yeah, that's kind of true too. Everybody kind of gets on my nerves anymore, though. I'm going to be honest. All this has made me far more cynical than what I used to be. I need to keep that in check.
Yeah.
So, if you do contact this channel called One of the People, They do a Telegram thing. I think they'd appreciate you. If you would, just tell them I sent you, because I started to join their Telegram. I ran into some situations after I met up with him that I couldn't stick with it. And I still occasionally keep up with him on his videos, but they would also be interested in your story. And he gives some good information on the paperwork he's filed with his sheriff, that he either doesn't get pulled over anymore, or every time he does, they just let him go, because he's got his stuff squared away as well.
Sounds. That's on Telegram.
Yeah, I'm on Telegram now on my PC.
No, he's here on YouTube, but they meet on a Telegram. It's his channel is One of the People.
One of the People, okay.
All right. One of.
And if you guys do need a break, now might be a cool time to play my funny how many different people took this girl's virginity video.
No. All right. But this is about the freaking Thorpes?
Well, it is the girl that went to visit them and left within hours of interacting with Grace and her dad.
No.
But here's the ironic thing, if Stephen David's still listening. As soon as I posted this video, within minutes, those streams I was talking about of them slandering her and finding out what happened, it was right after I posted this. Whenever Guy Fawkes is talking about like led by the Lord and holy timing and stuff, I feel like there was something to that.
Yeah, and let me just say on that, right? I know a lot of people are like, "What do you mean? That God compelled you to be there, right?" He put a knowing in my heart. So after 25 years of addiction, and I found sobriety, and an aunt of mine that I owed money to, I tried to pay her back, and she says, "No, Eric, I don't want your money. What I want you to do is come to church with me." I've been going to services for about 6 months, actually studying the Word, and the minister did a Sunday school on the parables of Christ. And he's going over the parable of the prodigal son. Well, during my time in addiction, I had destroyed my relationship with my stepfather. The man was like a real dad to me. My real dad had run out. And he was the root of all my problems. He's the person I always yelled at, stole from, who I treated the worst throughout my addiction. And I had completely destroyed any bond that was there between us. You know, the man had raised me since I was 6 years old. And we had zero relationship at this point in my life. And I wanted that back. I wanted that bond with my father like my little brother had. And I thought I'd never have that, right? I could get into the middle class. I could have a good life. I could have God, right? But this is just one thing. It was an unreal ask, right, to have that relationship mended because of my own actions, because of what I'd done. But I'm sitting in that pew and I'm hearing this. We're studying the parable of the prodigal son, and a knowing hit me. For the first time in my life, God had put something on my heart. He made a promise to me. He said to me, and not in any words, just with a knowing, right? It was in my mind and it was in my heart. It was a knowing that God will mend even that relationship for you, Mr. Clark. And within 3 weeks, my dad called me and asked me to go to the coffee shop with him. And I started meeting Dad every Monday morning and going to coffee and going to breakfast with him and Mom. And was about to start going. Now I can't carry a firearm. But to say the least, it showed me how God lets us know something and then affirms that, right? I'll let you know how this is going to happen. And here, look at this. It happened, right? The same thing when I looked at a post on December 19th of 2020 by General Flynn. It said, "Descend on DC." And I knew in my heart, the same way I knew in my heart that God was going to fix the relationship with my father, that God wanted me in our nation's capital on January 6th. It wasn't some voice. It wasn't some burning bush. It was a simple knowing in my heart. You have to be there. The same way it was a simple knowing in my heart, stay in the front.
And it's on each individual to discern that, because you either do or you don't. It won't be provable to other men, or you wouldn't require faith. But yeah, that is on each of us to discern if it is truly God or the God of this world effing with us. But yeah, good on you.
Yeah, it sounds like you went there to witness, man, and see things through different eyes than most people could use. So, because your stories, you know, you're kind of like proving everything, right? You're a witness to everything.
But let me tell you something,
Right.
Guy Fawkes. If we find ourselves beside each other in the line to get beheaded for not taking the mark, I bet my decapitated head can blink more times before I pass than your decapitated head can.
As long as they don't blink sideways and ain't no reptile eyes in there, I'm okay with that. I'll be beheaded right beside you.
Nice. I did make a video where I do have reptile eyes, but it's for a fake movie.
Oh, all right, we got the video up here. Let me see. We'll take a break from the J6 drama and the Freedom Corner anniversary, which we're all celebrating a 1 year off, and watch the Lumatommy's most recent video on the Thorpes and why they need to be exposed.
No, this was before I knew they needed. Right after I posted this, I just posted this to be funny to Grace and her friend because I just saw the inspiration for this when they were chilling online. But as soon as I posted this, then the whole thing unfolded of I do need to exploit them.
Huh.
This is just a little funny.
You know what this reminds me of?
What?
This video.
They're looking at
Unicorn means
Grace's
you want to have
dad's
3 ways
Tinder
with
profile.
couples.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in like
This
a
is their live stream.
Like,
It was, yeah.
This is
But I
the
modified it.
guy I lost my virginity to.
And today I was, oh doggone, this isn't gonna work. Today, sorry, I had an idea and it just went away. Excuse me.
So, like, this is the guy I lost my virginity to.
Being born of such
Oh, well,
conventional
no, I wouldn't be
stock,
complaining about that.
a
What the
rival
hell?
leader
He
of the
looks like he's
rebellion,
rich.
an escapist from a conformist world destined to find happiness only in that which cannot be explained.
You lost your
I
virginity?
have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions
Oh my
and
God.
the thick crustaceans dying on the surface.
So, like, this is the guy I lost my virginity to.
早上好，中国！现在我有
Oh,
冰淇
wow,
淋，
no, I'm
我很喜
not
欢
even
冰淇淋。
What the hell? He looks
速
like
度
he's
与激情
rich.
就冰淇淋，速度与激情，速度与激情就我最喜欢。
He's so cute.
所以现在是因为时间，准备1、2、3。
So, like, this is the guy. I
Chicks
lost
over
my
20, Soul Reed, kick rock.
So,
And Soul Reed, it's Grace's dad that is pushing it. Like this girl, I've never met this girl. She didn't fly out to Denver. She went to where they are, and things went squirrely.
You got to follow up on that one, man. I got to see how that.
Oh, I am. I've got her stream about it downloaded. I've got the Thorpes downloaded. I downloaded the one where Grace challenges Aphrodite on her R-word story. And I'm not gonna modify it and manipulate. I'm just gonna do one of those YouTube like, let's look at what's at hand here. Let the audience decide.
Sounds like there's a lot there, man.
Well, for my gift in my personal discernment that I'm seeing. It's like there was some very guilty body language and optics to them just immediately once she's gone, coming on to their stream and slandering her before they've even watched her explanation of why she left.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, why would you do that?
Because
Something
they
went
know they
wrong.
fucked up.
Yeah. Right. Like, that's ridiculous.
But
It's one
then-
thing to respond.
And you know
if she
how
says something.
Hollywood Ben is. You know how Ben is. The wording he was using and the way he told it, I was like, this is not helping at all. Like, Grace kind of has a vibe of like trying to assist her dad, but even Grace fucks up by referring to herself as, I was a bad Ghislaine Maxwell. And I'm like, what are you guys even doing right now? Saying you're a bad Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh,
Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, man.
I don't know. Let's check out Freedom Corner now. I don't know.
In your video, I referenced that I downloaded your old video. If that's Freedom
Yes.
Corner, if you want to revisit that, because I'm
Oh,
not, I
goodness.
still don't understand where the Bullhorn guy stands in all of it. Because he sounds
Oh,
like
that's
he's
Defender of Ants.
protesting the. He
Okay.
sounds like he's protesting the Freedom Corner people.
Yes, he is. Yeah. He's a
So
complex
is he an
character, though.
asshole?
Here, I'll pull him up right now. I was thinking about pulling him up. I don't know what he's talking about. Live. This guy.
No, yeah, fair. Yeah, we're here.
So he's down there somewhere,
All right, cool. I'm out.
probably going to protest Freedom Corner at some point.
Yeah.
He was at the courthouse.
Let me just grab my megaphone.
He's there all the time. He's been there for like a year now. He's been there the whole time, basically protesting them. He came from the People's Convoy, so he was a supporter of that until he got kicked out.
Is
I
he
met
from
him.
West Virginia?
No,
I just
I
saw
think
a
he's
freeze frame of his hat. I thought it said
Illinois.
West Virginia. Okay.
Illinois.
I think they're covered with that.
And you know how I am on these panels, Cruiser
Checking
Top.
my shoes. Nope.
When I originally thought he was Red Squirrel with that ranting, that's what I like. It's like, man, this guy's got the endurance that I had. He's just trolling and trolling and trolling. I liked it until I realized he was gonna talk shit on you and some freedom people.
Yeah, he's talking on them. He's bashing the Freedom Corner. And he's also the guy that Taylor Toronto did the where they watched the Woo's News video together. This guy right here.
Okay.
Taylor Toronto watched the Woo's News video of Ashley Babbitt, like where he was saying that it was all fake. And Toronto said on there, as a witness to her body, that he also thought it was fake, or it was possible, at least. He definitely strongly believed that. And that's why he was removed from Freedom Corner, because this guy, in the interview that they had, and watching the Woo's News video. So he got booted, and then he ended up he got booted from the Freedom
Between
Corner.
what Guy Fawkes was saying about his experience and some of the stuff I saw on another video you played that was exposing the actors, I see a lot of actors and acting situations, but there's a few from the video you played I would disagree with. Like some of the fake rage I did not find as fake rage. Some of it, like the guy that had, it was like blood or something on his face, I was like, nah, that seems pretty legit as far as how he'd be acting. And then with her, even in False Flags, I believe the people die, but I see where it was like very slow at getting any response or help to her. It was a fucked up situation, because I heard she was originally trying to tell people to chill the fuck out and stop climbing on shit, and that's how she got into the spot she was when she got shot.
So do you guys remember that video you're referring to, the Woo's News one? The first one where he starts talking about a guy named, he referred to him as Parrot Blocker. Do you remember that cat Parrot Blocker from that video?
I remember the name. I don't remember who that would be exactly.
Yeah, I remember hearing that name.
So Parrot Blocker, he had the footage of the Ashley Babbitt shooting. It was like, it would go dark and then come back and go dark and come back if you have his full footage from the day. He's the one that captured the SWAT team on the staircase just waiting there around the corner before, as, and while it was happening. So this guy, his name is Bill Keene. So Bill Keene he reaches. So I've got this friend on Facebook, right? This girl that I had grown up with. She moved out of the neighborhood when she was like 12, right? So we played tag and hide and seek, and then we went our separate ways. But when Facebook came around, we found each other on Facebook. We were both in addiction, and we are both now in recovery, right? So we were just friends on Facebook. Well, this guy that she had run into in life, his name was Bill Keene. It's Ferret Blocker from that video. He just pops into her house. She hadn't seen him in a couple years, and he just pops in over at her home. And he's asking her for like my phone number. He's like, I seen you were friends with this guy on Facebook, and I was just charged in relation to January 6th. And I just want this guy's phone number because I see you guys are Facebook friends, and he's been charged, and I maybe want to find out what to expect, right? What I'm going to be going through. This was last January when this happened. So this girl, she calls me before she gives me my phone number, and she says, Eric, this guy, his name's Bill Keene. He reached out to me. He came over to my house, and he wants me to give you his phone number. He wants to know what to expect in regards to being charged for January 6th. And then she goes on to say, but Eric, I don't trust this guy. He moved down here from another state some years ago. When he moved down here, he had his kids taken from him because him and his girlfriend had been having sex with his oldest daughter, who was an adult, barely, but was an adult. But anyway, him and his girlfriend had been having sex with his oldest daughter, and he impregnated her. And as a result, charges ended up being filed, and he lost custody of his kids. But now he is here at my house, and somehow he's got custody of his kids back. All those charges were just dropped, right? And he's wanting to talk to you. So I sort of understood what was going on, right? This guy's he's one of those CHSs. He's working with the feds. So I said, give him my phone number. And I went and I started digging a little bit on this guy. And I found out that this guy was also present, right, with his little camera making his videos under the name of Parrot Nest when Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi's houses were both vandalized on the very same day back in 2020. Well, he was right there filming it at Mitch McConnell's house. Right. So I found that odd that he was there, and he was right there when Ashley was shot. And now he's wanting to reach out to me. But really, I just wanted him to reach out to me so I could try to play along and get his full footage from the day without those black scenes, without those cutouts.
Yeah.
Right. But this is, he's Parrot Blocker. So he was right there when Ashley was shot. And I also find footage of after that scene, when Bill Keene leaves the building, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, oh my God, that was the most fun I've ever had in my effing life. This is what he's screaming right after he witnessed somebody get shot and killed in the neck. I mean, I don't know.
Who is his name again?
Like that.
Bill Keene. His real name is William Keene, and he goes by Parrot's Nest. At least he did in 2020 when he was like covering the Summer of Love. Right? From a Back to Blue perspective, he was covering, but that doesn't mean he wasn't doing so. At the behest of the federal government as an infiltrator.
No, if you get prevalent in any kind of coverage, you're going to be one of the first I'll scrutinize harder.
So I really don't like digging too deep into this because Mickey's phone number is like in my contacts, right? She's part of a community I'm part of. She'll tell my story to people, right? So it's not something I really like to dig too deep into because I wasn't there.
Yeah. You need to prepare for the technological future, whether it's writing down your contacts and never really assigning them in your next phone or what. Like I have a lot of crypto I hold that there's only one phone I have those apps on. In my future phones, I'm not even going to put that app on it. I'll just keep that other phone in a Faraday box in my house until it's needed. You need to start thinking like that because we're not going backwards by any means.
And that's not to say that, right? Let's say there was a third element involved that a lot of people don't want to consider anymore, right? Because nobody wants to hear there's a plan to straighten all this out. But let's say there was a third element involved, a special operation by some covert forces within the military that wanted to undo the plans that they had, right? Who wanted to quell the extent of violence that was intended, which I think a lot of us understand that they intended it to be far worse, right? This would have been a way of doing that, of infiltrating those groups, right? Maybe it's maybe it's all for the best at the end of the day. Maybe some of the psyops, right? Maybe good patriotic people are taking advantage of the modernization of the Smith-Mundt, just like the cabal is. And I don't know, but it's a theory I have to keep open mind to. Like I said, I have to approach this footage when I go looking at it from every possible angle to truly get to the truth. Keeping in mind what I know happened with my own firsthand testimony, right? That's got to be key. I got to trace my own steps. Also be looking at every possible aspect of what really happened. And you can say it's disgusting to even have those thoughts in there, but it's like, I'm a friend of Mickey's. I know Mickey, and I understand what she's going through is tough, right? And it really does seem that way, especially when you talk to her on the phone. But we have to keep an open mind. We can't let emotion get in the way of seeking truth.
No. And for future protesters or anybody that just wants clean footage compared to that guy you were talking about, and Truther Cop, this is okay. You'll be able to see it's my full laptop. It's not me. But this is me with my phone in my front breast pocket at the range, and it came out like a police cam. Like it actually looks like a police cam of me shooting this target, and that's just my front left breast pocket. If you're not gonna have a GoPro like strapped to your forehead or something. And look, there's where some asshole. This is a rebuild of the range after it burnt down during COVID. Some assholes already shot the perdition by accident. What a fucking joke. Lucky nobody's fucking dead. I mean, it wasn't while I was there, but when they gave me that lane, I was like, some assholes already shot this perdition. It's brand new. Partition. Sorry. And that wasn't a tourist judge, Carl. You're still here with your sock account. I don't really take the judge there.
It is tough with the whole Ashley Babbitt thing, but yeah, you have to be willing to put the emotions aside and seek the truth. It's definitely not easy with that one. There's a lot going on there, no doubt.
Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun. I've got to get something to eat, man. Yeah, I'm going to keep your stream playing though, so I can come back and catch up in the comments, and I'll be in the chat as soon as I get back. McDonald's is right next door to my house. Probably should be eating that crap, but it's right next door.
We want you to come back sometime, so maybe not leave the stream playing, maybe not watch it so much. Or you won't. You might not want to come.
No. It doesn't bother me, man. People can say whatever they want. I know in my heart I've just come on here and told nothing but the truth, the whole truth, right? And I'm good with that. If other people aren't, that's fine. They need to search themselves. They can search me out all you want to. You're going to find that. You know, I have no reason to lie to you. I have no reason to lie to you.
We're part of like a community that isn't all truthers and isn't all looking into this stuff. And sometimes we mix. So some nights you might log on and we're just berating each other or whatever's going on. So, but if you contact TC and want another day to talk more, we'll reserve that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the heads up there. And I've watched a couple of Truthers videos already before I decided to jump in here today. You know, obviously something led me to him. I watched his review of Act 2 that Woos did, and a couple other of his little videos after I saw that one. Then I seen you were on here today covering the 1 year anniversary. I'm like, well, I'm going to see what he's talking about. Okay, I see he's got a StreamYard link. I'm going to jump in and give my account.
There's definitely a number of people you can share a story with, man. If you want to get the word out.
Thank you, guys, and I'm going to jump off here.
Yeah, man. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Nice.